Welcome to Beyond the Realm. Today, I have with me two guests for the first episode, Ryan Rash and Dale Hummel. This episode is purely experimental. Regular uploads are no promise, but I'll try. Should these become a regular thing, 1 week might be black holes, the next might be goat domestication, and then after that, UFOs. Today's episode is titled Animal Intelligence. It's a pretty broad topic, so let's start off with the familiar four species of show stock. Ryan, Dad, could you try and give me your rankings of what you think is the smartest and then least intelligent of the four show species?
My ranking is hog is by far the smartest. And then it's kind of a draw, but I would go with goats being the dumbest.
I would go hogs first, followed closely by goats, followed by cattle, followed by sheep. So I can make a pretty strong.
He is racist and discriminatory against sheep.
No,
he has been.
I think
from the beginning. This is why the frame sheep people send me hate mail because Dale is racist and discriminatory.
I like the frame sheep people, and I think it's two pairs. I think that the goats and hogs are way up there with the monster cut in the middle pair. The cattle and sheep just dumb. Period. Dumb.
Mm-hmm.
I'm with my dad on this one. Same placings. Hogs are easily the most intelligent. Goats are a bit behind pigs, but I think they're smarter than sheep. People think they're dumber because they're harder to train. They're more headstrong, but I think it's just more they have more of a will of their own, and that's more proof of intelligence. Whereas the ones that are very cooperative, I think, are the dumber ones.
I want to state again that I said that hogs were smart and the rest was like basically a tie. Other than I do think goats might be the dumbest because they like. Yeah, I'm just going to go with that. But I think the other three are basically a tie.
Wouldn't you not say, Ryan, the goats are the most obstinate in the ring when you're out sorting shows?
Oh, without a doubt. That's why I say they're the dumbest. They can't. I mean, and I'm not saying... Okay, so y'all say they're headstrong. I say they're dumb because of all the animals in the ring, they don't lead, they don't brace, they don't do any of the things. And I mean, again, I'm not saying like just the ones that aren't worked with. I'm saying as a whole, it is much more difficult to train a goat than it is a sheep or a calf. And so, yeah, but again, I get being headstrong and stubborn and all that because I might be some of those things, and that doesn't make me stupid. So maybe you're right.
See, I was gonna relate it to that, and we could take it either direction. But I think working with the goats that sometimes the more we work with them, the more they don't like setting up and bracing and things like that. And some of our best showmen, and these were Texas families, they wouldn't even hardly work with the darn things in the barn. They did go to a lot of shows, obviously, and they were able to train them or get them to work in that manner. And I also noticed that, I don't know how to put this, I can't beat a goat into submission and doing what they want, where sheep and cattle, if you drag a calf behind a tractor or whatever for an hour, they're going to eventually lead. Same thing with a sheep. We just can't. Goats will go the other direction, kind of like a dang mule or a donkey. They just get stubborn and fight back to only do what they want to do. So it becomes very challenging because they're gonna do what they can to make their life the most enjoyable.
Good for them. I think y'all are missing the mark on all of this, though, because I know that we're starting with like the four stock show species. I do know what the dumbest animal on the planet is, and also the most inspirational.
I'd like to hear this.
Would y'all like to know?
Love to.
The dumbest animal on the planet is a jellyfish because it has no brain, and it's been giving humans inspiration for years because it survived all this time with no brain, so they can't do.
We're working. The White House is working on that, I believe.
I know, exactly.
A perfect example of that.
So,
Chase, can you? We've talked about the smarter animals. Chase, give us some guidance on why do you not think cattle and sheep are intelligent?
To me, it's a lot like you said, because sheep and cattle, they're very easy to break. You can force them to do what you want. A horse and a donkey might seem like the horse is smarter because it wants to do what you want to do, because you can train it easily, and a donkey is going to fight you forever. But in reality, the donkey is smarter. It does what it wants to do. If you put a person on a chain, it's going to be pretty hard to break them because a person is smart. They have free will. They do what they want. whereas a dumb animal is just going to be led along however willy-nilly.
Ryan, do you have any experience?
I hope Cherie never listens to this podcast, because she would argue with you, Chase, because she would have much rather me just like done exactly what she wanted to instead of being strong-willed or whatever. She does not think I'm smart at all. Like, she thinks I'm the dumbest human being in the world. So she would argue strongly, but I get what you're saying. And again, between a horse and a donkey, I understand that, kind of like sheep and a goat. And again, I'm sure there are scientific tests and how they prove all this. And so I'm not going to argue with you, because I know you're way more researched than that, than what I would be on this subject. I find it very interesting, though, that with like, even within like the goat species or the, cattle species or whatever, like I'm going to tell you that I think most cattle are dumb. I just do. And easily trainable, but dumb. But I do find that there are, just like humans, that there are some that are more intelligent than others. And so like, people will always ask me, what was my favorite show steer or favorite show heifer? And it literally, it's not the one, normally the ones that won the most. It's the ones that I thought were smarter or had more personality than the others. And so I think that's something that's interesting within it, because like, again, we've had goats on feed here, and there's some that like literally just do backflips and somersaults and like stand in the middle of the water trough or whatever. I mean, like, I think it's highly suspect on, I would like to know what the ranges of intelligence are between in that species. You see what I'm saying? Like, is it like humans? Is it that where there are rocket science geniuses and there are people that can't, find their way at home at night without a trail of breadcrumbs?
What about animals opening up gates? Our show stock figuring out how to open gates and latches. Any experience with that?
Oh yeah, all species, we've had that problem.
Yeah, and I would think that we hear a lot about that in the pigs. That I think in all of them, but that to me is a form of intelligence and proving some of that intelligence.
We did have a show family, the Shikes, right? No, not the Shikes. The Griffins. They had a camera in their garage, and they had their goat in a pen in the garage, and they caught on video the goat opening the gate latch.
I remember that. Yeah, very, very much so. It's interesting what they're doing with nobody, or it appears as nobody's watching.
I think pigs are the reason that I say that pigs are the smartest is because, number one, on the ordinary or the basic, pigs have way more personality. And number two, you could take a sheep or goat or calf in the same ring probably 10 dozen times, and they would not probably figure out the exit gate by themselves. You can take a pig in there one time, take him out and back to his pen at a show. You try to, like, if you do have showmanship that morning, you do that again in the regular show. The large majority of them are going to know where that exit gate is, and they want to go out of it. And so, I think it is quite obvious, just by the behavior.
That's a good example.
Yeah, just by the behavior that pigs exhibit in a show setting, that they are far more intelligent.
So I'm going to be self-incriminating here. This doesn't help our cause as a goat breeding business, but I will notice the same thing with our specific line of genetics, and they're very tightly bred. They will find that out gate. I'm not saying as quickly as a pig or as forceful about it, but pretty close. And if not the out gate, more so where their pen's located in the barn. And when we're walking in the ring towards the pen, they're going to be more cooperative. When we turn that corner to go away from where their pen is, in other words, they've already established home base and almost pen sour quickly. And just like a horse gets barn sour. So no, I see that very much. And there are very few pigs that don't figure out the out gate. Very, very few. Now there's some that have endurance and they want to get out there and show themselves off and so forth. But most average pigs are going to find that out gate immediately.
Right. I like that placing a lot of pigs followed by goats, even if Ryan disagrees a bit. So now that we've covered domestic species, let's try and cover some of the history behind understanding animal intelligence. So let's go over first. What do you guys think is the most intelligent species of animal?
Aliens.
Oh, that's a hard one. Of, of any animal, we can pick any animal out there. Wild, domestic, doesn't matter.
Any animal?
Well, it would be. Is it?
Wow.
Aren't humans considered an animal
Well,
in some ways?
outside of humans.
Oh, okay. I was
And
like,
I've
wait a
got
second.
I've got an argument.
Yeah, I know you don't think humans are the most intelligent, but anyway, moving on.
Yes, I have a strong argument that we are not.
Yes.
I don't know, Ryan. What do you think the most intelligent animal is? That's a hard one for me.
A shark? I don't know.
Oh, that's a terrible choice. No,
Why?
I could argue with them being one of the dumbest.
Sharks being
Instinct,
the dumbest?
all instinct versus
They've survived. I don't know. I
think you're right. They've been around as long, so maybe there's a case to be said. I think they've been around because of instinct. The common ones would be your orca, your dolphins, maybe some people.
Oh, I forgot about dolphins. They seem very smart.
Yeah, I can go a lot of directions. Chase, give us. I don't.
What
know
is the answer,
yours.
Chase?
Okay, I don't think there's any right answer because it depends all on how you measure intelligence. If I'm going by the measurement of if humans were to disappear just off the face of the earth, what species would next step up as the dominant species? I would say corvids, things like crows and ravens. I'll talk about them more later and why I think they're the smartest. But for now, let's move on to specifically the history of understanding animal intelligence. As far back as ancient Greece and Rome, people have been trying to measure it, and there are even stories that have been tested to this day and prove that they understood some animals were smart, like the crow in the pitcher. On a hot day, a crow wants a drink, and there's a pitcher of water with a narrow neck. So, to get to the water at the bottom of the pitcher, it drops stones into the pitcher to raise the water level and get a drink. And that might just seem like a random story, but it's been proven and tested in the modern day.
Ryan, that would be somewhat like Red Bull and Crown, that it was a fixed glass. You couldn't get to it. You'd find a way.
But yeah, I mean, I guess that's pretty sharp. I'm not gonna lie.
So I Chase, this was no training, no anything. This is a wild bird.
Just a wild bird finding a pitcher and wanting a drink.
Yeah, I'm in on that one. So you stated that they would be you defining animal intelligence as if we eliminated the human race, which right now with Russia and China, and it, as Ryan mentioned to me a couple of days ago, we're closer to nuclear war than we've ever been. So maybe we're going to do that. And I don't know what animals are going to survive that. But if we just erase the human race, which one's going to step up? I have a hard time seeing birds stepping up as a dominant species. I'm not arguing the intelligence. I don't know if they're physically capable.
All right. I can see your point there.
Okay, so I'm just going to throw something. I'm going to throw something out here. So if, let's say, humans got wiped off the face of the planet, and that's whatever, wouldn't the dominant species probably have to be something that could perform, hunt, whatever, both on water and land?
What would that be?
A crow can fly over water, if that counts for anything.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, that would make them more versatile, and that would, a shark, even though it's a very apex predator or whatever, it can't be the dominant species because it can't ever be on land. So you would think the dominant species would be something that can also swim, live and hunt and whatever on both. I'm just throwing that out there.
I think it comes down to, is there another species, and I don't know if there is because of physical handicaps, that can better utilize tools. That's where I go with it. And I think the raven or the crow, whatever your example was, Chase, that is utilizing a tool, but it's such a primitive level because I can't envision other species using tools. I think it's unknown, completely unknown.
I like that. So let's go a little further in the history of trying to understand animal intelligence. A lot of philosophers tried to debate it themselves, wondering about the very nature of thought. Some during the Renaissance even declared that animals were just automata. They believed that killing a rabbit was no worse than killing a metal rabbit, because a rabbit is just a bundle of pre-programmed responses to specific stimuli.
I can see that, but I would call a shark that. I think you're getting into the range of, and maybe you can explain this better. I when I was teaching, I would have a hard time defining and explaining animal instinct. And I think there's a clear definition or difference between animal intelligence and animal instinct. Like Ryan threw out their shark, I put that animal strictly in instinctive behavior. And when I put them in instinctive behavior, I also, in my mind, classify them as less intelligent, where they're, I guess, use a human as an example. I don't know if you call it domestication or whatever we've come to be. I think we have less instinctive behavior than most other animals, partially because we don't no longer need it to survive because of our intelligence and tools. Help us out, Chase.
You summarized it very well. There's a clear trade-off between instinct and intelligence. An intelligent animal learns from others of its species how to perform tasks and survive. Instinctive animals don't have to learn. You could take a cricket, and it doesn't have to be around another cricket in its entire life, and it'll still act like a cricket. If you take a person away from people and it never sees a person in its life, it's not going to be very much like a person.
So, like Tarzan raised by apes or coyotes, they're going to act like what their environment is surrounding them.
Exactly. Intelligence is the capacity to learn from those around them. Instinct is just knowing.
That's logical instinct, and maybe this is getting too far off topic, but how, explain to me, and I understand what you're saying, instinct, and I see examples of instinct all the time, but biochemically, how does a turtle leave a beach once it hatches for 4 years, swims around the world, and then is able to find that exact beach? How is a salmon able to go back to the exact spot where it was spawned? How does a bird travel thousands of miles to be at a certain place almost on the exact same day every year? How does this happen?
Instinct is still poorly understood on a large scale. The best running theory is that the brain creates shortcuts when something beneficial happens. If every time a bird went to a certain tree when it got dark and that tree was a safe place for it where it wouldn't be hunted by predators, the brain starts to form a neural shortcut. When it gets dark, go to the tree. And if this happens enough over a lot of time, then suddenly that shortcut becomes hardwired, and that sort of becomes ingrained in the species.
So
But it's
hardwired
still
and passed
poorly
from
understood.
generation to generation, passed along in the DNA.
Sort of. It's really hard to understand how instinct evolves. It could just be complete genetic lottery, that the bird that for whatever reason had a tick that made it want to build a nest did better because the nest protected its kids. And in reality, it was just a random defect at first. Same as like if a bird had OCD to build a nest, that became beneficial because the nest protected its eggs. It's kind of hard.
You're not defining instinct for me. It's still, that still doesn't, that to me is more learned behavior. I don't know. I'm just theorizing that somehow you talk about those shortcuts in the brain or the pathways. I believe that instinct has to be ingrained in the DNA. For example, when an animal's born, how does a calf know to get up and nurse and where that udder is to nurse from? That has to be
A lot of them don't.
present. That's a good point. Yeah, you are. I think a lot of them don't because we've bred them to be less instinctive. How's that?
Or I should say a lot of show cattle ones don't. I don't think they have that big a problem out, at the Yellowstone Ranch or ranches like the Yellowstone Ranch. But anyhow.
I would agree completely. Another example of the show ring causing a little havoc, maybe.
It's a great point, Ryan. From here, I think we've covered instinct decently well. Unless
I
Dad
still
wants to
someday I would like it explained better to me because I don't get it.
we'll do a whole
Can't
episode
wrap
on
my mind
instinct
around
in the
it.
future.
Excellent. And UFOs, can they come in right at the same time?
We'll do a 2-part episode. First
Not
30
good.
minutes, UFOs. Second 30 minutes, instinct.
You better schedule a whole episode for UFOs because once your freaking father starts taking off, it's going to be the longest episode
So
in history.
speaking of that, did anybody
Oh,
catch
Jesus,
Tucker
here we
Carlson the other
go.
night? On he did bring up some lights over Wisconsin and lots of people that saw him, and they're trying to pretend it's Christmas lights of some sort. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, but we can't continue to deny the existence of something, guys. We just cannot.
And next,
impossible.
Chase, what else would you like to discuss?
Okay, so moving a little further with philosophers, Descartes pondered the question further, and while he didn't make this quote specifically for understanding animal intelligence, a quote that he said was, "I think, therefore I am." And it implies that if something is smart enough to wonder if it thinks or to know that it thinks, then it is smart enough to understand existing on a larger scale. What do you guys think about this?
Oh, it's way over my head, Ryan.
I mean, I've always heard that quote.
So if they can recognize self in a mirror or something like that, Chase, is that what we're trying to say?
Recognizing itself in a mirror is a big hallmark of intelligence that some animals are tested on. Things like elephants and crows and dolphins often pass it. But it's more about, do you think a cricket ever raises the question of, I think, and therefore I exist? But something like a chimp or a dolphin, which might have an inner monologue, might ask itself that question.
I'm still hard for me. Ryan, maybe you
can. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've always heard that quote, and I've never really pondered it. But so you're saying that they have run tests where different animals of different species, either they recognize themselves in a mirror or not?
I mean, they've run that test on a lot of species, and it kind of follows that idea of I think, therefore I am.
Yeah, and so
it usually is a hallmark of intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that if I know people that at times don't recognize themselves in mirrors, depending on what time of night it is and where they've been. But I mean, I do think that is a very big hallmark of intelligence, and that if any species could not recognize themselves in a mirror, that's a big thing. And then also, I think, going with that, which species can differentiate, not that one platypus to another platypus. I mean, I think that they probably know that, but like Dale was talking about, how do they find their way to go home or go to this spot the same time every year? All this stuff. I would find it interesting to know which animals can identify which family members are theirs.
The smartest ones and social ones are usually the ones that can distinguish individuals. Dolphins give specific names to animals in the pod. Crows recognize their family members and will even warn them about people that shoo off crows off their porches or tell them about the nice old lady who feeds them breadcrumbs. And dogs recognize individuals of a pack by scent rather than sight. So dogs often fail that mirror test, but not because they're not smart, but because a mirror is a visual medium that works for humans. For dogs, understanding which individual is which is about scent.
That makes sense. And that maybe brings me to think more about just our perception or definition of intelligence. I think in a broad sense, we presume, unfortunately, intelligence to be more like us or more human-like, when it can be in totally different avenues. Like a dog, the scent is more important than the visual and so forth. So it becomes so complex and so difficult to measure. And one thing we haven't talked about, what about communication?
That was going to be
not
my
necessarily
thing.
Yeah.
That was
communication within species, not man to animal necessarily.
So, and before you get in a great direction,
right? Before you dive into that, Chase. So, have they proven that all species can have a form of communication within that different species? I mean, I'm asking. I don't know.
Just about every species has some form of interspecies communication.
Okay,
it's the complexity of that communication that's about intelligence. Humans develop complex language that we don't understand from birth. We have to learn it, whereas crickets know to sing just because.
No, that makes sense. And if we could break that barrier, and obviously I assume have tried, or I know we've tried to communicate with animals, we've had little to no success. Would that be accurate?
Yes, and that's actually a point that I've got here planned for the episode. So moving a little forward, you have the idea that if humans are animals and we became this far, then what other animals could be this intelligent? It's what people wondered in the 17 and 1800s, thanks to Linnaeus and Darwin deciding that people were a kind of animal. And moving even further forward, You had Thorndike and Pavlov, who proved that if you conditioned an animal, you could train it to perform just about any behavior. So from there, some biologists, a couple, the Kellogg's, actually wanted to teach a chimp to talk. And their best idea on how to do this was to take the about couple-month-old chimp, Gua, and raise it alongside their couple-month-old kid, Donald. And sure enough, the chimp started acting like a person. It started using a cup and spoon. It recognized specific people. It wouldn't fuss when they put clothes on it. But the unfortunate thing is that when they started language testing at around a year old, the chimp wouldn't speak. It would make chimp noises. But Donald, unfortunately, had begun making chimp noises as well as people words. So they shipped off Gua to a primate research facility so she would stop teaching their kid chimp language. And she unfortunately died about a year later of pneumonia.
That was terrible. Not her dying, but why would they not leave the child and the chimp together? And that child could have been our translator if it would eventually. Would that not have been possible to understand?
I had that exact thought of, yes, it might be
Of
detrimental
course
to
you
the
two
kid
would.
Donald, but he would be a great chimp translator.
Oh, Jesus.
Do you think that could have happened?
I think that maybe he wouldn't have been a perfect translator because maybe there's just no easy translation between chimp communication and human language, but I feel like he would have been able to easily intuit the moods and wants of these animals. But then again, maybe he will have only been able to interpret Gua, because Gua wasn't raised around other chimps, she was raised around people. So he'd be able to interpret Gua's wants, which some cues she might have taken from people. A kid would have to be raised entirely with a chimp tribe that had its own chimp culture rather than one removed creature.
So if that would take us to breaking the barrier of language between humans and chimps, Ryan, why wouldn't we do that?
Why do I care what a chimp
Take
says?
a baby. Oh, it's all about it. Then it opens the doors to everything. We can ask them questions. We don't have to guess what level of intelligence they're at. I think that's a huge one, and I would assume we could break this. I don't know what animal has the most complex language.
That's what I was going to ask, Chase. Like, do you have examples of some of the most complex, like the ones that their language is the most complex?
Yes, in fact, the next point was dolphins. Dolphins have incredibly complex language with different dialects around the world. They name individual members of their pod. They learn different words.
So time out. So like we speak English, a dolphin might have a southern accent versus a northern accent, or another one might speak Chinese versus English around the world.
Exactly.
Different.
Dolphins in different parts of the world that are very removed from each other have different words for different things.
It would make sense because it's a learned behavior.
Exactly. Actually, in the 1960s, NASA thought, well, if dolphins have languages, can we teach them human language? Because dolphins can mimic a few human words by using their blowhole. They can say, like, hi. It's not a very complex word, but they thought if they can say hi, you could teach them to learn a whole array of language. And it didn't work because mainly you can't make a whole range of human vocalizations with a blowhole, and even if they could, their brains aren't wired to process audio outside the water where sound travels very differently. And they tried 1,000,001 different things. They even built a dolphinarium, which is a half-flooded house by the ocean side where the dolphins and researchers would be around each other 24/7 in hopes that the dolphins would learn language from the trainers. And nothing worked. They literally even gave the dolphins LSD at one point. It was ridiculous. And the whole thing went down in a scandal that I will not talk about because this is a family-friendly podcast.
Got it.
You're going to have to send me this article privately. I want to know what the dolphins did on LSD.
I think it was sexual in nature. If I'm guessing,
I want to know. Was there?
I'm not going to confirm either of you because this is a family-friendly podcast.
Got it. Well, I'm going to take us another direction and maybe use dolphins as an example, but I relate animal intelligence. I can, and maybe I oversimplify or I don't know. Boredom is a direct indicator, in my opinion, of animal intelligence. Animals that have an active mind become bored more quickly than those that do not. So I can look and we can go back to the stock show species. I think pigs get bored.
This is why he discriminates against you and me, Chase.
This is not why. I think cattle or sheep, I don't notice as much boredom in them. I'm not saying they don't, and they they are occasionally bored, but I think if we go outside
do
of that
not
into the
get bored.
entire animal, no, I would agree. I mean, I don't see many symptoms of it. I see it in a goat that if we put things in there,
That's why they do all that stupid behavior because they're bored. Then I would say they are smarter than cattle and sheep because, like, you can literally put a steer or a show heifer in a dark, cold room with the lights off, and it will not move. I mean, literally for hours.
They seem just fine with it, don't
I
they?
mean, exactly. So there is no boredom. I mean, they pitch black, cold. They will be in the exact same spot they were when you left them 4 hours ago. They didn't even get up to like pee or anything. Like they're there.
So let's put a human with intelligence in something like that, like solitary confinement. They go crazy. They just do. So I think that, and maybe I'm wrong, it's easy. Ryan, I don't want to give you, I hate to acknowledge your a lot of positive about you all in one setting, but your brain is as active as anybody I know. And you also get bored more quickly than anybody I know.
Okay. So this is very funny that y'all bring this up. So I was on the plane, one of the last legs or whatever, I'm sitting there, and I've got one phone like hooked up to the back of the seat watching something, and I'm doing something on the other phone, and I've got headphones on, and this guy sitting next to me, he like taps and he said, and I had my computer out, whatever. Anyway. And so he's like, how do you like do all of that at once? I said, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, I can't focus on like one. And he says, you've got two phones going and a laptop and headphones. I was like, I don't know. This is just how things work. But no, I get bored terribly, terribly quickly. And I mean, I get it. Like it's, I mean, that like most people are like, how do you have two phones? How do you not have two phones? What do you do? Like, seriously. But yeah, no, I get it. And so for that, I will finally succumb to the fact, because I agree with you on the fact that because whether you put something in there with a goat or not, a goat is going to find something to tear up, buck around with, whatever, all that other stuff. So you're probably right. Goats probably are more intelligent because I mean, I had sheep my whole life and they just kind of laid there too. So yeah, because literally a cow, no, he does not get bored.
Chase, when you're sitting down in your little desk area in your office, and whether you're on the computer visiting with a friend or gaming or researching or whatever, what else do you have going on with your phone at the same time?
I'll have a YouTube video going on the phone. I'll have music through the computer. I'll have a game in front of me. I'm glad I'm not alone, Ryan.
Ryan, you're all in on that, aren't you?
That's how I survive.
Yes, and I there's no question I get bored, but I don't know that if I'm trying to really absorb one thing in a serious note, I'm not very good with the distractions. If I'm just trying to occupy my mind, the more distractions, the better.
Sir, I'm going to call you out. You cannot not have something on the TV while you're working at the desk.
This is probably true. I never looked at it that way.
Again, like another thing, like the reason I think there are multiple reasons that I'm a terrible driver, but like first and foremost, I never took driver's ed. Like John Ben paid off the driver's ed teacher so I could go show. Like I never did any of that. I took tests and whatever. That's probably
familiar, right?
That's probably first and foremost. But like other things are like people that are very good drivers. They just concentrate on driving and see. I will fall asleep if I just do that because like that's way too boring. And so like I'll be watching something on my phone or I'll be texting and driving and all this other things. So yeah. And the thing is I know I'm a terrible driver and I don't need to do it. And I don't put many people in the car with me because I am one. But yeah, I do think, and this just goes from my interaction with just people of all different areas of life and everything. I do think the quicker you get bored, it has a direct, whether there's a test that proves this or not, is direct on line to at least your, maybe not intelligence, but brain activity.
And I think it can all correlate. I'm there. And Ryan, this is interesting. John Ben paid off your driving instructor. Chase, who gave you your driving test?
It was Top Driver in Mantino.
But it wasn't. You didn't go do your driving test at a driver's facility. It was the guy that taught you how to drive, essentially.
It was a driver's ed company. I think they had integrity. And he said I had one of the highest scores he'd had in the short time that they'd been open at that location.
Oh, that is good.
And Chase, didn't you also drive your car with a flat for like miles at a time to where it bent the axle just like last year?
That
the rim
is
the rim, bent the rim.
Okay. I never got instructed on what to do with the flat, so I just limped back to the house.
So
see, he's a terrible driver too. He just doesn't want to admit it.
Oh, no. You hurt my feelings.
I'm going to use an example here. Holly and I went out and we very much guided Chase to the car he needed to buy, and it was what we considered to be the safest car if you were to get into an accident because of his level of distractions. I would prefer he doesn't use his phone when he's driving, doesn't do anything or even talk to a person. But Ryan, you mentioned it earlier. If I'm going down the road, middle of the day, and I'm just driving and that's it, I have no other focus. I have to admit, and this is terrible, I've fallen asleep more times than I can count.
That's what literally I am telling you. And this is not just driving, but like if we're at a bar per se, and I'm sitting there in a chair, and we're having talk and whatever, and all this stuff, and or at a restaurant or anywhere, show, whatever, that's fine. If you sit me in a chair anywhere else where there's nothing going on, I will be like out in probably 10 minutes. It's the same thing with driving. Like when I'm driving on, if I just solely, I mean, like, thank God they make those rumple strips or whatever to wake you up, because I'd probably been dead a long time ago. But I mean, and I don't know this. I can't prove this as a scientific fact, but because my brain doesn't shut off easily, like when it does, it goes so quick that, yeah, you're just done.
I'll turn the television on at night, not because I want to watch something, but if it can distract me for 3 to 5 seconds, I'm asleep that quick. If it distracts me and shuts the brain off to look at whatever that is. But Chase, so we got a little off track. Can we correlate boredom to animal intelligence?
It's perfect that you talk about boredom, because the first animal I want to talk about in terms of high intelligence are orcas, which are infamous for how bored they get. Orcas are incredibly intelligent. They sit at the top of the ocean food chain. They have different tribes or ecotypes that specialize in different parts of the world with different languages, what you could consider racial distinctions in the sense of like different white marks, shorter or longer fins.
Like there's racist orcas, you're saying?
No, races of orcas, but there are racist dolphins.
Okay.
Dolphins will kill other species of dolphin for no other reason than to kill another species of dolphin.
I like dolphins so much.
Ryan.
I do. I'm just saying I like those things. But what you're not saying orcas are racist. You're saying that they have different markings, so there are different races within them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
They have different languages among these different cultures, and they all specialize in different prey. One type specializes in just penguins. One goes after whales and seals. Another is almost purely salmon and mackerel. And then some are purely shark hunters. There's a bunch of different cultures and types of orca, just like there's different types of people all around the world. Some that were hunters and gatherers, some that were farmers and agriculturalists, just a lot of different cultures of orcas.
So you're saying there, again, when I go back and I keep coming back, instinctive versus learned behavior, when there's different sectors of orcas around the world that have their different languages, different prey items, that would be all learned behavior taught by the adults to the young.
Yes, exactly.
And I would like to bring up one thing, and orcas have fascinated me for a long time, and I used to use this in my animal science behavior section, and I haven't looked at it recently, but Chase, you and I have talked about it years ago. So orca is, I mean, you listed, Ryan, what are, Chase listed real quick, just out of curiosity, what do you think orcas eat? And he listed some of them.
Aren't they like, they're kind of like us, they eat meat, but they also eat vegetation, or no?
I think they're primarily
they'll eat whatever
carnivores.
meat they can get a hold of.
Yeah, any meat pot, they'll eat a shark, they'll eat a seal,
right.
they'll eat
I mean, that's what I'm
stingray,
saying, but yeah.
So think about us out in the water. Would you not think that that's pretty easy prey for an orca?
Yeah,
That's an excellent point.
I mean, why wouldn't they eat us? And to my knowledge,
they don't.
if any,
That's one of the funniest things. Killer whales don't kill people, but they're called killer whales. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it.
So why haven't they in the wild? Why haven't they attacked people?
It's a great question, and there have been instances. There's one recorded possible attack where it's presumed that the orca mistook a surfer for a seal. But other than that, there have been no instances recorded of orca attacks in the wild. There have been instances where they were introduced by people on ice floes down in the Antarctic. There were times where they seemed to be attacking boats, but they never attacked a person in the water, except in captivity.
Right, in captivity. Yeah, I was going to say. Now, Shamu got pissed off and ate one at SeaWorld somewhere. But
actually, yeah, I was going to talk about that, where Tilikum, the whale, was responsible for 3 of the 4 orca deaths in captivity.
Chase, they're all Shamu.
And
they're all Shamu, okay? They're all Shamu, sir.
Well, Tilikum is the dad of Shamus. They used him as a stud. And, well, the problem is that he was very bored. And one show at SeaWorld, he'd already had 2 deaths to his name. One time, a keeper fell into his pool at the last SeaWorld copycat, where he first was at. Then they shipped him off to SeaWorld, and a homeless person climbed into his pen, and he ate that one, but SeaWorld said he drowned. And then after that, there was Dawn Brancheau, who it was in the middle of a show when he just grabbed her, yanked her in the water, and tore her to shreds.
Yeah.
According to a SeaWorld official, they quoted, "They never had a plaything in the pool that was so interactive. They just got incredibly excited and stimulated."
So what do you think happened?
That's, I think, probably the best descriptor. That maybe he got a little frustrated because there are reports that she was running out of treats near the end of the show, so he got a little frustrated with her, dragged her in the pool, and then suddenly they live in this bare pool. They're used to the wide open ocean with a whole array of prey to hunt, and they play with their prey. They'll throw seals 30 feet out of the water just to watch them slap the water again. They'll tail whip stingrays to watch them get torn to shreds. They'll hold sharks upside down to drown them. They'll even tear moose to shreds that are crossing channels to try and get to verdant islands. They play with their prey. That's how they stay entertained in the wild. And in this bare pool, they finally had something to play with, and they just tore to shreds.
Wow. So I would have almost said some instinctive characteristic kicked in, but probably not with an orca. Maybe with some of the other animals that I want to visit about briefly. What about the instance? I don't remember which one it was. Was the 4th death when they drug a trainer to the bottom of the tank and basically drowned him?
Well, the first incident was drowning at the SeaWorld copycat. The second incident was the homeless person who climbed the tank. SeaWorld called it drowning, but the body was severely mangled.
How did they explain the first incident? What was the reasoning for the first drowning? If it was,
they fell in the pool and the orca held them underwater.
It was a trainer?
It was a student who was there researching the orcas.
So my thoughts are, Ryan, you can kind of tune in here. That student pissed with them at one time, and they were smart enough to take him out.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that. It's recorded that a lot of animals will hold grudges against specific people. Primates will recognize specific keepers who were too harsh to them. Crows will tell their friends about people who shoo them off or killed a crow chick at some point and will dive bomb them. And elephants, hilariously, hold grudges against specific keepers. If they felt wronged at some point, maybe 5 years down the road, that keeper will be in the pen scooping elephant dung, and it'll just
This sounds too much like Ryan to me.
I'm just telling you, I do believe wholeheartedly that animals do hold grudges. And so, again, like, I'm just telling you out in terms of our barn or whatever, if there is anyone else that can give, I mean, I'm not talking about a cow or a calf that's never going to be in the show barn, but like a show animal, a shot, they're doing it. Because I'm not doing it unless I'm the only one there that can, because I'm telling you, I have seen it time and time again, even with dumb cattle, that they know the one that gives the shots, or they know the one that, are too right, and they hold a grudge and they are meaner to them. So I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not giving shots to anything. Thank you, though.
I agree completely with that. And we try to avoid anything that's going to be negative to those show animals. We try not to have our showmen involved in that. Even in the goats, some of the goats don't like to be drenched, especially in the beginning. Even that we will try to avoid. Exactly what you're saying, Ron. All 4 species. I don't know about sheep, probably sheep, but they remember, and there's a disliking. I think there's much more positive of a showman being associated with positive interaction with that animal, period. And let's avoid as much negative as we can. Now, at times when a goat's not cooperating or a lamb's not cooperating, maybe a slight movement of your foot towards their belly gets them back in line. But outside of that, I think more positive interaction, the better.
I agree with you guys there. Like, I remember you gave shots to Rue, and he avoided you for a year.
Yes, our kangaroo is unhappy with me, basically, and I've only given him a couple shots, but he remembers, and I don't know that I consider a kangaroo to be overly intelligent by any means. Chase, I want to go one more direction here, at least for my interest. So we talked about instinct versus learned behavior. Most of the things, say a crocodile, an alligator, I'm even going to put a shark in there. I see people trying to make pets, whether you can go to lions and tigers, pets out of some of these very dangerous animals, and walking a full-grown alligator on a leash and getting up close to them. I don't trust there's enough intelligence there. And what did you talk about? Just understanding of self, that I'm afraid that some instinctive trigger is going to happen. And no matter how tame, we're going to use the word tame, not domesticated, that animal is, when instinct kicks in, it could kill you. Where are you on something like that?
I won't disagree that with something like a lion or crocodile or a shark, yeah, you can tame that thing down. Even dumb animals can be conditioned not to freak out around people. But I think you're right that if there's the right trigger, that instinct could kick in and they could severely harm their handler. And I think, though you say the alligator is more dangerous, I think the lion is more dangerous, because a lion is a mammal. It's hot-blooded. It's always hungry. It's always eager. It's always looking for a hunt. An alligator, as long as you keep it well-fed reptiles don't hunt because they have no reason to. They wouldn't want to waste energy like that. So I feel safer around a tamed alligator than a lion, but I'm getting lost.
Won't take you out just to take you out. They're only going to take you out to eat you if they're hungry.
Yeah, or if they feel severely stressed, like say you accidentally step on its tail, it might wheel around on you.
That makes sense. Ryan, you've been to Vegas many times, and I think we don't disclose a woman's age, but do you remember a show called Siegfried and Roy?
I never saw Siegfried and Roy, but I know the story that you're going to tell of. But I mean,
okay.
Everybody knows. I never saw it, but they were these legendary. From what I remember, they were these legendary white tiger, or all tiger, but they had the white tigers and whatever and all this stuff, and they had these shows every night. And I think the hotel they had their show at was the Mirage. Because I think we went and looked at the white tiger after Homeboy got mauled or whatever, and there was no show anymore. We went and looked. I think they still have them there, maybe, but this was years ago. But anyway, so one night, and they've done this show 900 million times all over the world. They've been in Vegas for God knows however, and like one night, white tiger snaps, and the fact that the guy, and I mean, drugged this dude off the stage, bloody, lifeless, all this other, and the guy never fully recovered, but he did survive for a while. Is that what you were talking about?
Yes, and thank you. That was a perfect introduction and explanation of it. I went further once it happened. I believe I don't remember what I was in. For some reason, I wanted to research it more, and I was intrigued by it. So I went into it deeper, and Siegfried and Roy, they would raise these as bottle babies, cubs, literally in their home. And I think each and every one of those tigers that they would perform with, they had such a close bond and a loving bond, to be honest with you, between the tiger to the person and the person to the tiger. As close as you could be. And I'm also convinced that not a one of those tigers would ever intentionally harm either one of those guys, because that was my interpretation of how close they were. So Chase, how do you explain that tiger attacking that night?
I think there's just some trigger in the crowd. Maybe there was a loud noise. Maybe there was a weird smell, something that a human's nose or ears would never pick up on, just set the tiger off. It got scared. It got spooked. It attacked the nearest person to it.
So I watched a documentary on it, And that is both Siegfried and Roy's explanation, that they still don't know what it was, but it was something in the crowd that set the tide. That's their explanation too, Chase.
That we may not even be aware of from our
Right.
perception of things. Or I originally thought it was just that prey instinct that for whatever reason, it just had that lapse that it went back to instinctive behavior over its long relationship and learned behavior. But hard to explain. But I can you both agree you don't assume that animal would intentionally have harmed that owner?
Yes.
No, because it's just like you said. I mean, they raised them as bottle babies in their home, stuff like that. And yeah, so it was bizarre. And again, like, because there are still, I mean, I don't know. I assume there are still circuses in the world. I mean, I know Barnum and Bailey sold out, whatever, but like, if this was something that was like that predatory instinct, whatever, I think there would be a lot more incidents of where with wild animals of all species and trainers getting hurt, getting killed, etc.
I mean, there are a lot of incidents. Like, did you ever see Tiger King? There was one person on there who was missing a hand because they were opening a gate and the tiger got him through the mesh fence and just took the hand off.
Tiger King is
Chase,
literally how I survived Rona. But anyway, yeah.
Chase, we haven't talked about elephants much, and I want to bring one more thing in there, and in terms of my check marks that I look at for analyzing animal intelligence, and the boredom is huge, but empathy and mourning a loss of a family member. And the only thing I can think of is elephants. And do you truly believe that elephants have empathy, or they will mourn the loss of another? Is that just something that's out there that's somebody's pushing a story that's not accurate?
I wholeheartedly believe it, that they are empathetic animals that mourn their lost ones. Like, when tested in a research setting, they could identify elephant bones from other animals' bones, and they would specifically give care to those remains. There was an incident where a bull elephant was raiding grain silos.
That one's hard for me to wrap my head around. Are you sure on this?
Yes. I will
Ryan,
find
help me
research
out
paper.
here.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's wrong, because I'm not going to defy Chase in his research, but I find that, I mean, that's incredible. If they can literally,
if that's true, that's a huge level of intelligence. If it's true,
then they are probably the most intelligent animal on the planet. But I also want to have either one of you ever been around an elephant?
Yes, in a zoo.
Okay,
Yeah,
but like
we
have you ridden an elephant and been up close and
Yes.
personal with an elephant? They are
We did
the
in
only thing that stinks
Chase in
worse
Thailand.
than a billy goat is an elephant, in my opinion.
What?
They smell
the kids,
terrible.
I didn't do this, but one trip to Thailand, the kids actually went in a pond and were able to swim with the elephant, ride the elephant while it's swimming, jump off its back, and then we went on an elephant trek. All those things, and I don't remember that terrible smell. I remember the pond was too gross for me to jump into.
Oh, they smell terrible.
But I do feel when I'm close to an elephant, I can't explain it. I feel a sense of intelligence from them. I have no way to quantify that, but just being in their presence, I feel that. Chase, other examples of the mourning or empathy? We kind of got off track there.
Yes, there was a bull elephant in Africa that kept raiding grain silos. So they hired a European hunter to come shoot it because, these people need to eat. And they shot it, and he dragged the carcass away many, many miles and even butchered it up a bit. And he expected scavengers to and he expected scavengers to deal with the rest. Well, what he found was that the elephant's herd came by and dragged the remains back to where he shot it. So they seem to have some sanctity on the remains being or staying where they died.
These are hard for me to wrap my head around.
And there's other instances where they seem to try and cover the remains of elephants with branches and leaves, almost like a burial.
Ryan, are you in on this one?
Again, I'm not going to defy Chase's research, and I've watched enough Animal Planet that I have heard other people say that, not to the extent that Chase is saying, but that they do mourn, that elephants do mourn the loss of their own. And again, I find it very hard to understand, but I'm not going to say it's impossible.
All right. So or elephants, we've talked a good about them, and I think they're smart in terms of like puzzle solving, teamwork, empathy, and all that. But I think we should also look at our closest living relatives, primates, because yes, they're hyper intelligent, but for a long time we put a bit too much emphasis on how intelligent we thought they were. And doubling back to how you guys want to know about language, there's actually a lot of experiments besides just Gua and the Kellogg's into trying to teach primates to speak. I'll paraphrase, but
I saw a movie, Chase, and one of them was sign language speaking. I saw it in the movie.
That's the issue. Because they can't speak human words because their voice boxes aren't just built for it. And there was two theories. The Chomsky theory said that language is specifically human, that the way we speak is wired into our brains as part of instinct, not to be able to speak, but to be able to learn to speak. And that you can't teach it to just any other animal. Whereas the Skinner theory said that any animal can be taught any behavior with enough reinforcement, and that's how humans learn. We're rewarded for speaking. When we ask for food, we get food. When we ask for help, we get help, so we learn to speak from a young age. Hypothetically, you could do the same for a chimp, and because they can't speak, you just use sign language. The issue is that Chomsky was right, because you've heard about Coco the gorilla, who could supposedly sign over 1,000 different words and asked for a kitten and understood abstract concepts and lied and yada, 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 yada.
Isn't that the one that ate the kitten?
It didn't eat the kitten. The official story from the Gorilla Foundation is that it escaped the pen, got to a road, got hit by a car. I find that a little tough to believe. And then maybe it's a cover story because Coco was a, very profitable brand, the talking gorilla. But whatever. So getting back on track.
So Coco
handler,
actually
Penny
ate
Patterson.
the kitten. But
I don't know if she ate the kitten, but I find it hard to believe that it escaped and was hit by a car.
okay, this Chase is still very young and naive, and Coco ate the kitten. We're just going to move on.
Gorillas aren't that much of carnivores, though. They're mainly herbivores. So I don't think she'd eat the kitten, at least. Maybe get a little too rough with it. Maybe accidentally, break its back playing with it.
Coco murdered the kitten, Chase.
That's
in one way or another. Coco killed the kitten.
Okay. Moving a little forward, Coco could supposedly make rhymes, and she'd confuse words that sounded alike just like a little kid would. Penny Patterson said that Coco, she made a painting when given paint and paper, and she named the poem a rhyme. I gotta find it. It's Pink, Pink, Stink, Nice Drink. She called that a poem, Penny Patterson did, because it rhymed. And I bet you're thinking, oh, that's smart. The gorilla made a rhyme. But the thing is that the gorilla didn't know spoken English. It knew sign language. In sign language, rhymes don't rhyme out loud. They look similar. See two raccoons crossing rhymes in sign language because the signs look similar. 2 is 2 fingers pointed upwards, and C is 2 fingers pointed forward. So they rhyme because they look similar. A rhyme for Coco should have been a sign rhyme, not a spoken out loud rhyme.
So you're calling bullshit
falls
on it.
apart. Calling complete bullshit because that doesn't make sense. She didn't know spoken English. So it was just gibberish. And
what about these paintings that these gorillas or chimps do that are kind of like the Hunter Biden paintings they sell for a lot of money?
They're better than Hunter Biden's.
Actually, yes. They are real. Primates like chimps seem to have an understanding of basic composition and balance. If a keeper marked up one half of a paper, the chimp would mark up the other half to make it look balanced. And that's interesting. It proves a level of intelligence. But I think we put too much emphasis on how intelligent they are in terms of at least just language, because it gets worse. Because Penny would translate for Coco. She never put out any data. She just said all these cool things Coco could do, which is bad research. And in one instance, Coco was being interviewed, and they were trying to get her to say people or say something about people. And she said nipple. And Penny Patterson, her translator and keeper and researcher, etc., said, oh no, she means people. Nipple sounds like people. But once again, mixing up signs, they don't look similar. Nipple and people look very different, and she didn't understand spoken English. And in reality, she just had a fascination with nipples. It's the weirdest thing. Gorilla experts don't understand why, but specifically Coco was obsessed with specifically nipples, and there were 3 different lawsuits when Penny Patterson was trying to get workers at the Gorilla Foundation to expose their nipples to Coco.
Okay, Coco, a male or a female?
Lord.
Female. Weirdest thing.
Female. Got it.
All right, so just so we're
3
clear,
separate lawsuits.
Chase, When you send me the LSD on dolphins video, I'm fine with that. I don't want any videos of Coco and Nipple. And I've seen what Hunter Biden does on LSD, so don't send me any of those videos either.
Okay.
So Chase, I think that to simplify in my mind, the reason we perceive primates, chimps specifically, as being intelligent is they're more human-like, and we just assume.
Yeah, that's a lot of it. And ultimately, a researcher, I can't remember his name for the life of me, but he was the one in charge of the NIM project, which was the most recent attempt to try and teach a chimp sign language. He ultimately concluded Chomsky was right and that primates just aren't wired for it. Because when they would sign food, toy, their name, food, toy, their name, in just complete gibberish order. They wouldn't learn sentence structure. They wouldn't learn anything. It was no better than a dog being taught to shake and get a treat. It would learn the one thing and then be rewarded for that thing. And you could teach just about any animal to do that. So it wasn't really proof of being able to speak or make language.
I don't know. I had a lot of boyfriends. I tried to treat them things and they never learned. So, I mean, I wouldn't say any animal. I'm just putting that out there.
Okay. I think, no, it goes back to smart ones are headstrong ones that don't learn easy.
God, I can see that.
But yeah, moving on to something that I think can learn language, at least better than a primate, maybe not very well, doesn't still understand a sentence structure. You have birds. Parrots is the first thing that comes to mind when you want to talk about bird intelligence.
I'm glad you brought this up because when you were talking about language earlier and stuff like that, I was like, I mean, you can teach parrots to say sentences, words, or fragments of sentences, etc. So, yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, there was, macaws in the wild will eat clay to help neutralize toxins in certain nuts and fruits they eat. Kias in New Zealand will strip the rubber sealants from like car windows just for no apparent reason than boredom, and will also go up to snow-trapped sheep out in the pasture in the mountains and tear out their wool and eat their back fat. It's the weirdest thing, and they caught it on camera. And furthermore, African gray parrots can live over 80 years and have been taught more or less language. They can't make sentences, but they understand language. Like if a keeper taught them what blue was and taught them what key was, they could be told to go get a blue key even if they'd never seen a blue key. They understand the basics of nouns and adjectives, which is impressive. But I think the real unsung hero for birds, as far as champions go, are crows and ravens. And Dad's got a great story for this.
Well, I don't know about a great story, but this intrigued me, and I had a very young childhood memory that I had to ask my parents later in life if this was actually true. My parents had run a grocery store in a town about 30 miles from where we lived. And at this grocery store, there was a crow that had a little bit of white paint on his wing, and it would sit on the railing outside the door of the grocery store, and it could say hello. It could say several things similar to what you'd see in a parrot, and it would sit there because people would come out of the store and give it a cookie or a treat or whatever. And this thing would almost, I mean, it shocked me as a young child. I thought the darn thing could talk just like I'm talking to you. Obviously it couldn't, but this was a wild crow, not a trained crow that was loose, and it would go, and Chase had talked about, it would go around town and identified what houses were user friendly that would give it food and stop there and get food. And I just amazes me that an animal can do this without human intervention, maybe is the best way to put it. I don't know. Sad story. And I don't know that it's absolutely true, but the crow disappeared one day. And I hear there was a young child in that town that was out crow hunting, and the crow is no longer with us.
Well, that's just
why
rude.
would anyone go crow hunting?
At that time, you just did things like that. So this was a very long time ago.
Crow.
It's sport, Chase, called sport.
What sport is there in hunting crows?
And he did have a white wing, so people wouldn't do that because they knew kids were shooting birds, and they all knew to leave this alone. Maybe he was looking. I don't know, but I still to this day, and my parents did verify this, but it's hard for me to imagine that could even happen.
It really follows more that Skinner theory of it would be rewarded for talking. It heard people talk, and then it was talking on its own because crows like to mimic sounds they hear, and someone rewarded it for mimicking a sound. They tossed it next to scrap or something like that, And it learned that if it talked, that people would reward it. And while, yes, that's not an understanding of language, it's interesting that a wild animal chose to do that, because usually it's only domestic ones that have to be trained for it, but this wild animal independently learned how to do it. And furthermore, there's another instance of, this is a domestic raven, so less interesting that it learned to talk, because it's always around people, and it's taken care of by people. Its name is Fable, and they put up a hidden camera in her pen, and with nobody around, or no other birds around, she would just talk to herself. She'd say hello, hi, boop, boop. And at one point she said, what the F? And the keeper was very surprised because they thought they'd prevented her from learning any swears.
Whoops.
But it would just talk to itself with no reason, no reward, just talk to talk, which is interesting because that's what humans do. Little kids and even some adults do, is that we'll just talk to ourselves when we're doing stuff.
I don't talk to myself. Not that
I do all the
maybe
time.
on occasion.
Some of the most intelligent
your
conversations I have are with myself.
Yeah, you're just in your room, you're looking for your keys, and I'm like, looking for my keys, just like having an out loud monologue to yourself for no reason, even just talking to yourself.
Understand. Well, Chase, we're as I always try to keep us on time. I know Ryan has such a busy schedule. I don't know he probably has to get a pedicure, a manicure, some highlights. What else do you have to do before Christmas?
So funny.
What do you have for us to conclude this episode, Chase? Being your first episode, I was excited that I was able to be a guest and appreciate it. And it's a topic that I have interest of. I hope others do as well.
Likewise, I really like this topic. And honestly, I had a lot of fun talking about all these animals, animal intelligence, discussing the show stock species with you and Ryan, who have many more years of experience than I do. And honestly,
Chase just called
really
me old on a podcast.
Not old, just experience.
I'm just kidding with you, Chase.
But yeah, like Dad said, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. If we wanted to, we could make an entire series just discussing animal intelligence, but these were just a few of the most relevant and interesting examples. Now I'll ask a question to you guys, the listeners. If there are going to be more episodes of Beyond the Realm, what topic do you want to see covered next? Send your requests to Beyond the Ring Facebook page. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Beyond the Realm, and I hope to see you next time.
Be safe.
Y'all come back now, you hear?